The federal government, under the leadership of the Biden administration, they have allowed for the release of a staggering 6.2 million illegal aliens into this country over the past 3 years, with frankly no end in sight. If these illegal aliens were to go and form their own state within the country, it would be the 18th largest state in the nation. And one of the most shocking things about this migrant crisis is the level to which it's being facilitated by the federal government's own border patrol. For instance, here's a video from the border, and it shows illegal aliens actively looking for border patrol agents so that they can turn themselves in and get apprehended. Think about that just for a quick moment. Instead of trying to avoid border patrol at all costs, instead, these illegal aliens are actually looking for border patrol in order to get into the country. Now, seeing this state of affairs, the state of Texas has taken matters into their own hands. Their initiative is known as Operation Lone Star. It's a $2 billion a year program for the state to secure its 1,200-mile border with Mexico. They have set up buoys on the river. They've allowed local judges to order the deportation of illegal aliens. They have deployed thousands of National Guard troops to the border itself. And then more recently, they've blocked federal agents from being able to access the actual illegal aliens themselves. And they've done this in several ways. For instance, the Texas National Guard, they recently took complete control of Shelby Park, which is near Eagle Pass, and they've been blocking federal agents, meaning the Federal Border Patrol agents, from accessing the park. This, in effect, it stops the feds from being able to wave all these migrants into the country. Quote, Shelby Park is a 47-acre municipal park in Eagle Pass, where hordes of illegal aliens have entered the U.S. in recent months and years. The state seized control of the park on January 10th. In addition to fencing the perimeter and improving shoreline barriers, the state ousted federal agents, allowing them entry only in specific circumstances. Likewise, the state of Texas has been setting up razor wire on the border with Mexico in order to stop these illegal crossings. And this razor wire has proven itself to be quite effective, with migrants having to turn back around because even if they cross the river from Mexico, well, they still can't get into the country because of the actual barbed razor wire. Now, the Biden administration has gotten creative. They've been cutting the wire down in order to access these migrants. However, the Texas National Guard, they've actually been stopping the feds from doing this, causing a lot of tension between the federal government and the state-level troops. Now, eventually, the Biden administration asked the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in, and in our previous episode, we already discussed how the U.S. Supreme Court, they recently ruled just 3 days ago against the state of Texas. And they stated that the Biden administration could, if they wish to, cut down the barbed wire fencing. If you actually want a deeper analysis of that court ruling, I'll link our previous episode where we broke it down point by point. The link will be down there in the description box below, which I should mention is that description box right below those like and subscribe buttons, both of which I hope you take a quick moment to smash. Regardless, what's been happening ever since the Supreme Court ruling is really wild. That's because shortly after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled as it did, the governor of Texas issued this declaration right here, invoking the state's constitutional right to self-defense against what he referred to here as an actual invasion. In relevant part, here is the legal justification that he laid out. Quote, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the U.S. Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. That is why the framers included both Article 4, Section 4, which promises that the federal government shall protect each state against invasion, and Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3, which acknowledges the state's sovereign interest in protecting their borders. The failure of the Biden administration to fulfill the duties imposed by Article 4, Section 4 has triggered Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3, which reserves to this state the right of self-defense. For these reasons, I have already declared an invasion under Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3 to invoke Texas's constitutional authority to defend and protect itself. That authority is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. The Texas Department of Public Safety and other Texas personnel are acting on that authority, as well as state law, to secure the Texas border. In plain English, the governor of Texas is saying here that because the federal government is experiencing something like a dereliction of duty, and that since they were not securing the border anyway, the state of Texas, they set up razor wire fencing and they deploy their own National Guard troops to stop the invasion, which they claim is well within their rights as per the U.S. Constitution. And as such, the state of Texas, even after the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, is working on installing more razor wire, while at the same time, the Attorney General of Texas, he came out and he said that Texas will continue to not allow federal agents into Shelby Park. Then, within just a few hours, what was just a battle between the state of Texas and the federal government, well, it suddenly escalated. and it began creating fault lines across the whole nation. That's because, on the one hand, you had Democratic lawmakers urging Joe Biden to go ahead and to take control of the Texas National Guard. For instance, here was a statement by Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas. Quote, "Governor Greg Abbott is using the Texas National Guard to obstruct and create chaos at the border. If Abbott is defying yesterday's Supreme Court ruling, the president needs to establish sole federal control of the Texas National Guard now." Likewise, you have Congressman Greg Casar, who's another Democrat from Texas, saying the following, quote, "If Abbott is defying yesterday's Supreme Court ruling, Biden needs to establish sole federal control of the Texas National Guard." Now, just for your general reference, in case you're not aware, the governor of Texas, he is the legal commander-in-chief of the Texas National Guard, but only when that National Guard is not being mobilized by Title 10 of the U.S. Code. It's sort of a feature of our federalist system of government. It means that the governor is the commanding authority over the National Guard troops when they are within the state's borders, but only during the period of time when they are not being mobilized by the U.S. Department of Defense, meaning the U.S. Pentagon. And so, for instance, right now, at this very moment, as we're making this episode, while the Texas National Guard troops are on state active duty, they are operating under Title 32, which means that they fall under the command of the Texas governor and they are paid by the state. But in theory, Joe Biden could federalize the National Guard, and in accordance with Title 10 of the U.S. Code, that would allow him, meaning Joe Biden, to in essence take control away from Greg Abbott and to take the direct command of the Texas National Guard. Now, at the moment, it's not clear whether that is something he would actually consider. I mean, after all, this is an election year, and seizing control of the Texas National Guard in order to force open the border, well, that probably will not play too well on the campaign trail. In fact, the only real statement that the White House has released on this particular issue, at least thus far, came from the White House spokeswoman who said this during an interview over on CNN. Quote, "We want to make sure that we get something done at the border. That's why we have been having these conversations with Senate Republicans and Democrats for the past several weeks to come up with a bipartisan agreement to deal with the border. Look, if the governor is not interested in that, Governor Abbott is not interested in that, he wants to politicize an issue, and he's not helping communities, he actually isn't, and he's actually putting Border Patrol agents in harm's way by doing what he's doing, I'm not going to speak to any actions that the president might take, might not take, but we have been very clear about that." All right, if you're like me, then probably once a week, you stop for a second and you ponder to yourself, whatever happened to Chuck Norris? Well, I recently saw a video that he made and I was shocked. The man is in his 80s, but he's still kicking butt, staying fit, working out, and staying active. What's even more shocking is that he's stronger, he can work out longer, and he even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. And he says he did this by making one single change. He convinced his wife to make the same change as well, and now she says she feels younger, leaner, and again, she has more energy for her grandkids all day long. Now, Chuck made an awesome video explaining everything, and by watching it, you might actually change your opinion about health. So head on over to chuckdefense.com/Roman and see it for yourself. Again, that's chuckdefense.com/Roman to see what Chuck Norris is up to. Regardless, while on the one hand you have these Democrat lawmakers urging Joe Biden to federalize the Texas National Guard, on the other hand, you have the governors of half the states in the nation siding with Texas in this ongoing battle. That's because just yesterday, the governors of 25 different states, they signed a joint letter supporting Governor Greg Abbott in his fight against the federal government. Essentially, this letter, it was signed by every Republican governor in the country except for one, except for Phil Scott of Vermont. And here's collectively what these Republican governors wrote in their collective letter. Quote, "President Biden and his administration have left Americans and our country completely vulnerable to unprecedented illegal immigration pouring across the southern border. Instead of upholding the rule of law and securing the border, the Biden administration has attacked and sued Texas for stepping up to protect American citizens from historic levels of illegal immigrants, deadly drugs like fentanyl, and terrorists entering our country. We stand in solidarity with our fellow governor, Greg Abbott, and the state of Texas in utilizing every tool and strategy, including razor wire fences, to secure the border. We do it in part because the Biden administration is refusing to enforce immigration laws already on the books and is illegally allowing mass parole across America of migrants who entered our country illegally. The authors of the U.S. Constitution make clear that in times like this, states have a right of self-defense under Article 4, Section 4, and under Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3 of the U.S. Constitution. Because the Biden administration has abdicated its constitutional compact duties to the states, Texas has every legal justification to protect the sovereignty of our states and our nation." Now, standing in solidarity is great, but in terms of actual practical support, well, President Trump weighed in on the matter, and he urged all these governors to actually send in their own National Guard troops to the U.S. southern border in order to assist the state of Texas. Quote, "We encourage all willing states to deploy their guards to Texas to prevent the entry of illegals and to remove them back across the border. All Americans should support the common sense measures by Texas authorities to protect the safety, security, and sovereignty of Texas and of the American people." And indeed, it looks like that's exactly what is going to happen. For instance, the governor of Oklahoma, he has just confirmed earlier today that he will be sending his own National Guard troops down to the state of Texas in order to protect the border. Take a look.
The former president, Donald Trump, has suggested to all the Republican governors out there, send members of your state's National Guard. In your case, Governor, it would be the Oklahoma National Guard. Send them down to Texas to help Greg Abbott. Are you going to do that?
Absolutely. You know, I've done it once before, and we're looking. I already talked to my TAG, my General Mancino. We've already started putting the numbers together. We'll be in contact with Governor Abbott.
Now, at this very moment, while we're filming this episode, Oklahoma is the only state to have made this commitment, but likely before the end of the weekend, there might very well be several other states to commit their troops to the border as well. And in the meantime, as fault lines begin to develop in this country over support of Texas's decision, well, the term civil war has been ominously trending over on Twitter. Must be an election year. Although, just to give another side of the story and another side of the perspective, our reporter, who's actually on the ground over at Shelby Park, she was able to speak with Lieutenant Chris Alvarez of the Texas Department of Public Safety, and here's what he told us about the potential standoff between the state-level troops and the feds.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there is. I mean, there's been a lot of hype about that, that there's going to be this situation, with the feds and the state. Of course, those are higher level decisions. I think at the lower level, the ground level, with the Border Patrol agents, the soldiers, the troopers, rank and file, there's no issues whatsoever. We still work together. At the end of the day, we need one another. We have one common goal, and that is to secure the border. So we'll continue working with each other.
And so there you have it. If you'd like to go deeper into the story, I'll throw all my research notes. They'll be down in the description box below this video for you to peruse at your own leisure. And then lastly, if you're watching this episode and you're thinking to yourself, man, I love this content, I just wish Roman would put out more episodes every single week. Well, you're in luck, because I do. Over on Epoch TV, our awesome no-censorship video platform, I publish anywhere between 1 to 3 exclusive episodes of Facts Matter every single week, usually on topics that are, quite frankly, too spicy for here on YouTube. And so if you'd like to get access to those episodes, including a huge backlog from the last 3 years, well, now's a great chance to check it out, because the Epoch Times is running an awesome promotional sale. 25 cents a week for 6 full months, which, if you do the math, works itself out to just be $1 a month. And so if you're indeed tired of all the censorship on this platform, as well as all the nonsense coming out of the mainstream legacy news outlets, well, perhaps take the sale as an opportunity to try the Epoch Times for yourself. I'll throw a link to the sale page. It'll be right there at the top of the description box below. You can just click on that link. It'll take you to the sale page where you can try the Epoch Times for, again, just $1 a month. I hope you check it out. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed. Most importantly, stay free.